The best coaches in the game, we really ain't playing. We regroup up in the Slack chat where the coaches debrief. We be piecing these puzzles, occupy the chunk of the pie. Ain't no lie when we hit the block, helmet's casket is top. You be seeing helmet after helmet, helmet after helmet. First place, second place, fifth place, eighth place, 12th place, 15, 16, 20. So many helmets, you got blurred vision, we got too many. Tick. Oh man, shit. They got us fucked up. Army, regroup. We pledge always to have that edge. We don't fire warning shots. Competition just drop. We locked and loaded before lock. Whatever the time, yeah. Do you even correlate?
Being the best requires a willingness to outwork your competition. There's always someone smarter, faster, sharper, more naturally gifted to come around.
Welcome back, DFS Army. Week 14 was awesome across all slates, really in, Yahoo DFS FanDuel. But this is a Yahoo podcast, so we are going to take a look real quick at the Yahoo Baller, what took it down last week, and then we're going to look at the week 15 DFS main slate on Yahoo. So let's go. All right, so the Yahoo Baller is Yahoo's top GPP contest, and they're actually running a little promo right now where normally it'd be $20 to enter this contest, actually $25. But right now they're doing $12, so they're running two contests at $12, and the top prize pays out $25,000. So the top score last week, so they do half PPR and obviously a contest of this like 9,000 people, much easier to win than like the Millie Maker. So the Millie Maker last week, I believe, is 272 points, took it down. Yahoo Baller, 9,000 entries, half PPR. You only needed 192 points. So the People's Cha took it down. Nice avatar, by the way. And what we see, and this is kind of what we've learned, with Scott Newman and his back testing that he's done over on FanDuel, which uses the same scoring as Yahoo, is you need a quarterback +2 for tournaments. So that's pretty much what's going to work almost every week over on like FanDuel on Yahoo. So that's what it was again this past week. And, DFS Army, we obviously targeted the right game environment. You needed Jared Goff in this tournament. It was Jared Goff plus DeAndre Swift and DJ Chark. And then Justin Jefferson was the bring back here. So Goff was good for 26. Swift, he bombed, but you still see the +2. And then with Chark hitting 18 points and obviously being more of a contrarian play, very contrarian, only 4% owned. And then Justin Jefferson, he was chalk, but really not that bad. 16% for Justin Jefferson, 27 points. And then from there, we had another stack. So a team stack of Jamar Chase and the Cincinnati Bengals D, which, we identified those as well. And Tony Pollard, we loved him. He was in a smash spot going against Houston, 20 points. And last was Evan Ingram. So this was the difference maker. He was 2% rostered, across most slates, pretty much on all sites. He was anywhere from 2 to 3% rostered. And there was always at least one lineup that had the right game stacks, whether it be, Trevor Lawrence stacked with Evan Ingram, or, Goff stacked and just have Evan Ingram as a one-off. So this lineup scored 192 points. Something to keep in mind when you're playing the Yahoo Baller. If you're hand building, you need a quarterback +2. If you're using an optimizer, make sure you set that rule, quarterback +2. That's what we continue to see to win it. So we're going to take a look ahead at week 15, though, and the main slate on Yahoo. So first, let's look at the Vegas totals. Not as high as a week as we had last week, but there are a couple of games that we certainly will be looking to target. So the first game, 37.5. We had Pittsburgh going against Carolina. Not really a ton to like here. Trubisky did not look good last week. He threw 3 picks. The Panthers, they are looking better with Darnold. But now DJ Moore has an injury, and it's very hard to predict their running back. timeshare that they got going on. So low game total for me, this game is pretty much an avoid. Now, Philly and Chicago, I like this game in several ways. First off, I love Hurts and Fields in cash games this week. And Chicago, they are poor against the run. So Miles Sanders is in play. He's not really popping in the optimizer, and I love that because he's probably going to be under-owned. So like he was last week when, he really went off for like 144 yards, 2 touchdowns. So I like Miles Sanders this week. Obviously on the Philly side, I think Chicago actually has a very poor defense overall. They had given up, I think before the bye, they had given up like 40 plus points for, like average. It was well over 35, that I know, for like an average of 3 to 4 weeks, because they traded their 2 best playmakers on defense. So obviously I think you can attack that on the Philly side with Jalen Hurts. Obviously Sanders is a one-off. You're not going to stack him with Jalen Hurts, but if you do Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, there's a lot of ways you can go with it. And what I love about Philly is they do not take their foot off the gas when they are leading big, as we saw last week. They smoked the Giants, and Jalen Hurts still got 30 points. So next game, Kansas City. And before I go on, Fields on the other side, love Fields as well. So Kansas City and Houston. Now, Chris Moore, if there's no Nico Collins and Brandon Cooks this week, I think you definitely can play Chris Moore again. He smashed last week. He's getting a lot of targets, so he's in play for me. And then, if we get some clarity later on in the week at the running back position, certainly Kansas City just across the board is not a good defense. So you could certainly play Burkhead or the other running back, Dare. I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name. And then on the Kansas City side, Houston is obviously horrible against the run. So Isaiah Pacheco is in the mix. Jerick McKinnon, of course, in GPPs, as we saw last week, he went crazy. And then they're not great against the tight end. So Kelsey is very expensive. He's priced all the way up. He's $36. So tournaments, you can certainly play Kelsey. I'm not going there in cash games. I prefer pay down options, but that's in play, as well as Mahomes stacks. So next game, Dallas at Jacksonville. So this setup is just really good on the Dallas side for their passing game. So I do think this is a great bounce back spot for Dak, for Lamb, Dalton Schultz. As far as the running game, I wouldn't go there in cash games, but I do think you could play Pollard, obviously, in tournaments. And then GPPs, you never know if they are very good moving the ball up and down the field. They get stopped short of the goal line. Zeke, falls in the end zone a few times. He can have a big day. But on the Jacksonville side, nothing really that I like there. And Detroit, New York Jets. This is a game, despite the low game total, this one I think can potentially be a sneaky shootout game. The Jets do have a good defense. So on the Detroit side, at first look, not a ton to love here, but Detroit has a lot of different ways that they can score. So certainly there are a lot of guys that you certainly like. Amon-Ra is actually projected as a chalk. I don't love it. That's an easy tournament fade for me. But obviously, Swift, DJ Chark, we saw Williams in their passing game getting involved last week. So in tournaments, definitely a lot of ways you can go. Cash is an avoid for me on the Detroit side. With the Jets, however, you have Zonovan Knight. He's getting like 77% of the rushes at this point. He had 15 carries last week. Looks really good. He's cheap. We'll get into that. And then the passing game, Garrett Wilson's a smash for me. Corey Davis could be a great value play, specifically in tournaments. And then Tyler Conklin as well, because Detroit's just across the board is bad at defending, running back, wide receiver, tight end, you name it. So Jets project really well, and Mike White stacks as well. So Atlanta and New Orleans, not a ton of love here, but I do like Atlanta's defense because you have a rookie quarterback, Desmond Ridder. So we always like defenses against a rookie quarterback. They're projected to win, of course, too, and they're at home. So just not the best environment for Ridder. Now, Kamara and Olave, just because Atlanta, they are poor at defending the run and wide receiver. So I do think Kamara is cash viable. Olave not going there in cash, but in tournaments, you could certainly play him this week. And then if we get Juwan Johnson back, same thing. Atlanta is bad against the tight end. Recency bias is kind of everyone off Juwan Johnson, kind of out of sight, out of mind. So I do think he's playable as well. Denver and Atlanta. This game, not Atlanta, I'm sorry, Arizona. Arizona, they had the Monday night game. They lost Kyler Murray. It was just a disaster of a game. Ramondre Stevenson went out. He's the next game. We're going to talk about him. But they lost Murray to ACL. So Colt McCoy, he is starting. And this is on the road going against Denver. Has a great defense. Not a good scenario for Colt McCoy. So I like Denver defense. Lat Murray projects as one of the top fantasy points per dollar play with Mike Boone going on IR. He's certainly in play. Arizona is worse against tight ends, so I do think you could play Dulcich this week. And then Jerry Jeudy would also be a play as well. But there's wide receivers. In cash games, there's other places I'd like to go than Jeudy. But certainly if there's no Sutton and then Kendall Hinton has a hamstring injury, Jeudy smashed last week. Love Jeudy, in tournaments and whatnot. Now, next game, New England against Las Vegas. Maybe we'll get Waller back this week. He's designated to return from IR. New England, not very good against the tight end position. So that could be an interesting GPP play for me. Wouldn't play him in cash. Just been burned by him all year and season long. Wouldn't do it. But New England is very good against the running back. So for me, Jacobs is a fade this week in cash games. And it's funny because Las Vegas is really good and they win when they target Devontae Adams a lot. So New England, very good against the run. You win when you target Devontae Adams a lot. It's a very simple scenario for me. You need to feed Devontae Adams. So I like him this week. He would be my top pay-up option at wide receiver. And then on the other side of that, Ramondre Stevenson. So Ramondre Stevenson, Las Vegas defense, the one spot where they are quite weak is against the run, giving up quite a few points above average to the running back position. So Ramondre Stevenson, for me, if he plays, if he's full go, if we get news that, he's not going to be on a snap count and, he's fine, he's good to go, I certainly would have interest in Ramondre. Health aside, he would be the top running back play on the slate for me. And then last, Tennessee. So we have Henry priced all the way up, and the matchup is great. So he is going against the Chargers, who have a just horrible run defense. So he is certainly a great play. Now, there's two things you do have to worry about with Henry, though. Their offensive line is banged up. They're not good right now. And secondly, their secondary is bad. So you saw last week, Henry kind of did a lot of his scoring before the game was a negative game script. There is a scenario where the Chargers could just exploit Tennessee's very poor secondary, which I expect them to do, which is why Herbert, Williams, and Allen are all great plays. And then the Titans are playing from behind, and then it's a very bad game script for Henry. So that is certainly a game script that you have to worry about. For me, Henry's probably a fade in tournaments because of that. That's just going to be my strategy. But in cash, he's projected as chalk, and it is a great matchup. So I do think that's a great play. So going over to my sheet. Now, this is my article that I'm writing. Follow me at FantasyFling on Twitter because this article is almost done. And as soon as I finish it, I tweet that out. But right now, quarterback. So there's a few guys, and this is my cash game pool that I like to go over first. Now, cash games are talking head-to-heads, 50-50s, double-ups. I'm looking for high floor players. I don't want a lot of variance. So I want players that get a lot of volume, high floor players, and then we're going to sprinkle in some top fantasy points per dollar plays, like a Chris Moore last week, for example, who, was thrusted into this role. He was underpriced for his role, and he smashed at a salary. So that's we want to sprinkle a couple of those in. Typically, we're looking to pay down at tight end and pay down at defense. and, get as many high floor players as we can. So when you're piecing together your lineup, because, I give you a lot of options here, keep that in mind. Because obviously you can't squeeze all the top dollar guys in. And if you're a DFS Army subscriber, by the way, you have access to the chalkboard, and this kind of helps guide you to the safest plays, the chalk, what the field is on, because in cash games, we don't need to differentiate ourselves, really. We're only trying to be half the field. So maybe one spot we're trying to differentiate ourselves. But overall, we're trying to play as much chalk as we can. So if you're a DFS Army subscriber, you have access to our chalkboard, and this really helps building your cash lineup. Use code FantasyFling for 10% off a VIP subscription. So let's get right into it. Quarterbacks, Jalen Hurts. He's the leader in the MVP race. And he just remains an every week play in any matchup, because it doesn't matter how much the Eagles are winning by. They continue to keep their foot on the gas, even when up big. Last week we saw, 48-22 was the final. Hurts put up 30 points. Now they did call the backup in at some point, but Hurts had already put up 30 points. So, gosh, in cash games, that's all you want. So he's had 7 straight games with over 20 points. And so he's a top cash game play again this week. Now, there is a little bit of a pay up between Hurts and Fields, and, that can make your decision. I do like Fields this week in cash, $36. I would probably choose him over Mahomes. The matchup. So one thing you have to kind of keep in mind is that we're looking at like matchup against like your traditional quarterbacks. Just it's an average of quarterbacks that the Eagles may have faced, right? Fields, he's anything but traditional though. So he has averaged 102 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown across his last 7 games. And he's seen an uptick in passing in his past 3 games, averaging 191 yards per game. So he's playable in cash, and in tournaments, I do think you could run him naked, but he can be stacked with Cole Kmet as well, because that seems to be his primary pass catcher. Now, Patrick Mahomes, he would be my last quarterback that's cash viable. Houston is better, being attacked on the ground, but they also aren't great at defending the tight end position either. And we kind of saw last week, he's basically matchup proof. Denver, even though, Mahomes threw 2, maybe 3 picks last week, he still scored 22 fantasy points. So his floor is safe for any defense, and that's why he's almost always cash viable. And right now he's the chalk at quarterback on Yahoo DFS. So we certainly like playing the chalk. Now, running backs, as I mentioned in my overview, Los Angeles Chargers give up about 3.38 points above average to the running back position. And naturally, Henry, he has a top projection this week. So it's a great matchup, obviously, in this matchup. And, he's priced accordingly at $40. So Zonovan Knight, as I said, 77% of the carries. He had a total of 18 touches last week. So even with Michael Carter active, he's still got the majority of the carries. So Detroit defense, although they are pretty good against the running back, overall, they're not a good defense. And it's this thing where if you're getting down to the red zone, if their wide receiver, if they're bad, their secondary is bad to where they can't defend wide receivers, can't defend tight ends, and you get down to the red zone, this is a situation where like a $21 running back gets some goal line carries. And, we've seen him be explosive already. So we like the price. We like the volume. And the matchup is good enough that he becomes a good play. Isaiah Pacheco, I alluded to, Houston's run defense, horrible, which is why I did the Millie Maker review this past week in MME strategy, for example. And Geek, he almost took down the flea. 50,000 people. He had 22. He placed 22nd, and he had, I think, his second lineup, which placed on like top 100, had Zeke and Pollard in it. So Isaiah Pacheco gets that matchup this week. He has double-digit points over the last 4 games, and this week he gets Houston's defense second worst in the league. So giving up 5 points above average. So we like that. Now, Kamara, he has fallen. Had the mighty fallen. So, but he's quite underpriced on Yahoo. So this isn't a play, obviously, like on DraftKings, for example, but $19 on Yahoo. And he has the fourth highest projection against an Atlanta defense that's bottom 10 in the run. So, he's the second highest fantasy points per dollar play among running backs this week. And then, you're kind of noticing I really just had like one high payable option, Derrick Henry. And then it's kind of just not good, right? In the 20s, we got injuries. It's just, it's a 10-game slate. We got a 3-game Saturday slate. So not a ton of options. I'm kind of going with pay down options at running back. And, we typically like to do 3 running backs, 1 in the flex. So keep that in mind. It's more of a pay down at running back, pay up at wide receiver kind of week. So, it's just messy in the $25 to $40 range. Connor is one of the best value plays just because Kyler Murray's out, Colt McCoy's at the helm. Connor's projection is a fraction of a point behind Kamara's, and he's $19, so we certainly like that. Latavius Murray, as I mentioned, Boone is on IR, so Murray, he's got the lead back role, top fantasy points per dollar play against an Arizona team that gives up 2 points above average to the running back position. So you can see why he's playing. And then especially with Russell Wilson potentially maybe missing the game because of a concussion last week. And even if he plays, you got to think they're going to want to lean on the run more this game than they did last week because you don't need to score as many points against the Cardinals led by Colt McCoy as you did against Mahomes-led Chiefs. And then, I love Ramondre Stevenson if he's healthy at his price. So Adams, as I mentioned, he's the top pay-up option for me, 33% target share, top 3 wide receiver, and top pay-up option for me at wide receiver. So Jacksonville with their bottom 5 pass defense, despite last week's dud. Lamb, he still has a very elite target share, 29% on the season, and this is a prime spot for a bounce-back game for Lamb. Allen. So I like Allen and Williams. I prefer Williams in tournaments just because we've seen a lot more 100-plus yard games from Williams, and he's actually $1 less. So the Chargers passing attack, they're facing this Tennessee defense is worse in the league. And we now have, as we saw the other night against Miami, we have Herbert against with the offense how it's meant to be, with Eckler, with Keenan Allen, with Mike Williams, with Josh Palmer. So this is going to be a stack, whether you do it with +2. Going to be harder to do Keenan and Williams, but you could do Keenan Palmer, Williams Palmer. Everett can be in the mix as well. So I love these stacks this week, and Keenan Allen, I love him in cash. Now, Garrett Wilson, as I mentioned, he'll definitely be my cash game lineup this week. The Detroit Lions secondary is 3rd worst in the league against wide receivers. So last week was a much tougher matchup, obviously going against Buffalo. This week, we don't have to worry about that. So this is a prime matchup for him. And although he's priced up, the highest we've seen, he's still not high. It's still good value considering his upside. Now, Jerry Jeudy, like I said, this is, just trying to provide a couple guys in the teens. His volume is there and the upside is there. So if there's no Sutton this week, I think Jeudy is cash viable. If there is Sutton, I wouldn't go there in cash, but I do think he would be, tournament viable still. But 9 targets in week 14. And actually there's no Hinton this week. So Hinton has a hamstring injury. I'm guessing he doesn't play. So Jeudy is in a good spot. And then, even better though in cash for me would be Chris Moore at $16. He smashed last week. He had 11 targets. So this is assuming Nico Collins and Brandon Cooks are both out again. He's a great play this week going against a Kansas City team that's just very below average at just on defense and also defending wide receivers. So for tight ends, Jacksonville, they have a poor defense overall, and Schultz, he's kind of more like a wide receiver. He just projects very well this week as well against them. He has the 2nd highest projection on the slate, and he's half the price of Kelsey. So, at $36. So I like that. And then Dulcich, Arizona, worse in the league at defending the tight end. Dulcich, He has back-to-back 8-target games this year, so he does project as a great play, and the ownership isn't high, so I would like him in tournaments as well. Now, Tyler Conklin, in addition to wide receivers, Detroit, they're not good at defending the tight end position either. So I like Conklin. In his price, you can do it as a standalone tight end play. And in tournament stacks with Wilson, obviously, in double stacks, Mike White, Wilson, Conklin, I like it. Shig, DFS Army. If you watch the Players Club, Tournament Tactics, we were all over Chig last week. So, he has 5 targets in 3 straight games last week, which in Treylon Burks' absence, that spiked to 7 targets, and he scored a touchdown. So, second highest fantasy points per dollar play at tight end behind Ingram, who was in all GPP winning lineups, I feel like, last week. So, he's obviously in play as well at $13. Now, defenses. Again, I tried to target paydowns and good matchups. So Denver Broncos defense is probably as high as I'm going this week. $15 to going against Colt McCoy. They're at home. This is a good matchup and a good price. And then New Orleans Saints, they are going against Desmond Ridder. Again, at home, they're favored. This is kind of what you're looking for going against a rookie quarterback at $11. So, these two defenses probably my highest exposure this week. Los Angeles Chargers, they're $10. They're going against Tennessee. So Tennessee, outside of Henry, has just been bad mainly because their defense is so poor. So they get into these negative game scripts and, they can be forced to pass the ball. So Los Angeles Chargers, and passing the ball ends obviously in turnovers when you're forced to do that and you don't have a team that's set to throw the ball. You lean on your team is built to run the ball. So that's why Los Angeles Chargers is one of the top fantasy points per dollar plays over the Domination Station, which we are about to head over to. And then my Yahoo Baller stack of the week, I got Justin Herbert and Mike Williams. But believe me, I will have plenty exposure to Herbert and +2 stacks, and it won't just be Mike Williams. So when we go to the Domination Station and we set rules, Herbert +2 pass catchers, we smash in a door, which I'll show you how to do this. If you use the Dom Station, if you're a DFS Army subscriber, I probably don't have to tell you how to do this. But for example, we just go to projections and then we smash in a door on like Herbert. And then if we were building tournament lineups, and we would just add rule quarterback, no less than 2 pass catchers of wide receiver, up tight end from same team. Bam, we had that rule. We would get Herbert, plus Mike Williams, plus Palmer, or Herbert plus Keenan Allen plus Everett, plus Keenan Allen plus Palmer, sort of thing. Especially, when you kind of go through here, you can manipulate it to do what you want it to do. So when we search Williams, smash the door on him, maybe we do minimum exposure, so on and so forth. So that would be my top stack of the week. Now, as far as some top leverage plays, it's early in the week. It's Wednesday, but, we want to kind of look at what the field is going to do so we can look for some pivots off of that. Specifically, if we can find some really good matchups at low ownership, maybe where the field is getting it wrong, that's something where we'd look to target. So Justin Fields at 5%. I have a hard time believing his ownership was going to stay that low. However, I said this last Wednesday, and then I look at it Saturday and Sunday. And Sunday, I update my article, by the way. So give me a follow on Twitter at FantasyFling, as I will do an update thread as I send that out. But when I did that on Sunday, a lot of the guys were still low owned, so they ended up being smash plays this past week. So Fields looking pretty low. Dak, we alluded to it. Jacksonville, they're very poor, at defending the wide receiver position. So, and Dak stacks with like Lamb or, Gallup for example, or Schultz, +2, whatever it may be. These are some leverage plays, of course. Jared Goff, I would go back there if nobody thinks they can score on that defense and take some shots in tournaments. Absolutely. So, and then Russell Wilson coming in really low owned right now. Can they build on what they did last week? I don't know. Probably not. But if he's going to be low owned, maybe we do Judy and Dulcich again, assuming he plays. As far as running backs, Dario, just kind of as we mentioned, Kansas City is poor against the run. There's that uncertainty. Is it going to be Burkhead? Is it going to be Dario? A lot of people think it's going to be Dario. So very low owned. I like that. Miles Sanders, as I talked about, Chicago, very poor against the run. So this could be another under-owned play as he was last week. I like that. Zonovan Knight, projecting well again, and Burkhead. So, with the Houston D, I think you could definitely get some exposure to both of these guys. And then Jerick McKinnon, this guy literally went nuts last week. He's been on a tear. He's gotten, it seems like, let's look it up here. Let's see how many touchdowns he's gotten over the past several weeks. Yeah, he's gotten 3 touchdowns over the past 3 weeks. So, if McKinnon is going to continue to be low owned, I do think certainly take some shots with McKinnon. Again, it's just crazy to me. You would think with recency bias, people would be higher on him than that. But I guess not. Mike Williams, as of right now, our Yahoo Baller stack of the week, looking pretty low owned with Mike Williams at 5%. I like that. He's not really popping in the projection, so that's probably why. But yeah, it could be lower owned. And same with Josh Palmer. So especially if you're doing Herbert plus 2 sacks, got to have some Josh Palmer. So even if Williams, his ownership climbs up a bit, definitely Josh Palmer. I like that. Chris Moore coming in projected as low owned again. So certainly we'll have some exposure there in a good matchup and a great price at $16. Now, I like Josh Reynolds because we saw, obviously, DJ Chark go off last week. And, specifically if like Sauce Gardner is going to, cover Amon-Ra for a good portion of the day. Josh Reynolds, 1%, $10. That's definitely a way to, have a bring back in like your Mike White stacks. If you're targeting that game, or if you're not doing a full game stack, and, as far as like a primary stack, like Mike White, Garrett Wilson, bringing it back, maybe you could just kind of ping pong it, just do a little mini game stack. It's a secondary stack. Garrett Wilson with like a Josh Reynolds, DJ Chark type, coming in low owned. So I like that. And then these guys are all zeros. We'll see where that gets to be by the weekend. But yeah, for me, Amon-Ra in a tough matchup going against the Jets D, this is a type of move that, you have to be willing to make in large field GPPs and just be not afraid to lose. You have a player top projected, highly projected owned, but it's a tough matchup. So that's a fade for me in tournaments. And I'll live with the results of that. Trust the process over results over the long run. It's a positive EV decision to do so. Now, specifically at tight end and defense, like we saw last week with the Cowboys D, high scoring defense, great matchup, pay all the way up. They ended up being extremely chalk, and then they failed. So one of the best ways to gain leverage on the field is fading a chalk defense that is high owned, like Dallas D, and we do that at tight end as well. So if we can, find some value tight ends who are not highly owned, we will certainly take some shots there. Dolce's pretty good matchup, not looking highly owned. Gerald Everett, Tennessee's not very good against defending tight ends either. Gerald Everett, kind of disappointed this year, but it doesn't take much. And then, Tyler Conklin, we talked about him, 1%. So Detroit, bad just against mainly wide receiver and tight end and quarterback. So that could be a really good play in leverage play at tight end and also in stacks like that as well. Look for some lower owned defenses. None as of right now, none of these are appearing to be too chalky. So, kind of just play the best matchups. Follow this closer to the weekend, obviously, and we'll see where it goes. Like Arizona, for example, if you get Brett Rippon playing, who came in right away and threw an interception for Denver, threw a touchdown, but also threw an interception. 4% on $16. That could be a good play if Wilson sits out. Denver low owned against Arizona, against Colt McCoy at home. So if these two stay low owned, you could probably play both sides of that. New England, priced all the way up, very low owned. Probably would not go there, but that's extremely low ownership. And the New York Jets against Jared Goff. As hot as he's been playing, not good when blitzed. Jets have a good defense. Could be a bad game for Goff. So that could be a leverage play if you're willing to pay up a little bit, which we are in GPPs. So I think that's going to do it. Appreciate you all joining me. Obviously, if you like this kind of content, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share. If you play Yahoo DFS, but you also play DraftKings, FanDuel, a lot of comment coming up. 3-day slate or the 3-game slate on Saturday, and then also tournament tactics, GPP, great GPP minds the DFS army, and that is coming out on Friday. Be sure to subscribe and hit the notification button, because when you don't want to miss that show when it goes live. I promise you, a lot of the GPP winners that you see every week are on that show. Bobby Wow throughout. Trevor Lawrence, for example, last week, who made it in the Millie Maker last week to win the Millie. So if you like this content, like, comment, subscribe, and share. Wish you all the best of luck. We'll see you next week.